Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Trendspek's webinar series. And we're delighted today to be joined by David, who's one of the co-founders of Drone Harmony. And it's the flight planning app you need, especially if you're going to be conducting 3D models. So welcome to David. And also with us today, we've got Danny, who is a chief remote pilot of a drone services company, Hoverscape, who'll be talking about some of the in-field methods of using Drone Harmony. So welcome, gentlemen. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Pleasure. So I thought we'll just quickly discuss what we're going to be doing today. And first off, David will be taking us through Drone Harmony app and how we can flight plan through Drone Harmony for different types of infrastructure. So we'll be starting off with a tower-like chimney stack, and then we'll also touch on some different types of assets as we go. And then, as I said, Danny will take us through what you do in field and how you get it all set up and configured so you can run the capture autonomously through the app. And then based on that flight plan, we will go over some of the results through Trendspek, and we'll take you through a bit of a walkthrough. So don't forget, we will do a Q&A session at the end. So if you do have any questions, you can just pop them in the little chat window there. And I thought to kick off, we might run a quick poll just to see what type of assets you're capturing, and we can try and touch on some of the flight planning methods for those assets later on. So if you just want to vote there in the side poll, you can do that. But otherwise, I'll let David now introduce us to Drone Harmony first. Over to you, David. David, have you got us there? You might be on.
Apologies. I was muting myself to not disturb this. Yeah, welcome from my end also, everyone. I'll be happy to show you the Drone Harmony platform. For those of you who are not familiar, this is a data acquisition platform, so it's designed to plan flight missions and execute them in the field to collect data. We're focused on vertical infrastructure primarily, so the idea is to enable our customers to use some sort of automation on the plane mission for more complex type assets than something like a field survey or something like this. So vertical infrastructure, towers, chimneys, buildings, complex terrain, and things like this would be the type of use case that you might want to be using Drone Harmony for. We have a web application and a mobile application. The web application will be the thing I'll be showing you primarily today, and the mobile app is kind of the operational tool in the field, and they're kind of connected by a cloud, the Drone Harmony cloud, that will synchronize data from one application to the other and enable the inspection engineer in the office to communicate seamlessly with the operators in the field. So I will just start my screen share now. Let me full screen that. So what I'll be showing you is quickly the Drone Harmony web application, in particular on the use case that's of interest. I think it will kind of fit well with what Derek and Danny will be talking about also later on, that of inspecting a cooling tower. But before I go into the specific example, just quickly how the platform looks and feels like. So in a very high level, you would have this kind of view of a map with various locations where you have assets where we're performing some sort of data acquisition, some sort of mission planning, flight execution. So these are represented by these blue circles, and you see that you can zoom in and interact with them on the level of full sites, save them to the cloud, and zoom into them. So you would probably want to save a ready site to the cloud for your operators to be able to execute then the corresponding missions in the field. So let's zoom out all the way and zoom in on this particular example here. So you see that once I've zoomed in, I have a much closer view of a specific inspection site, some sort of industrial site I just picked randomly for this demonstration. And you see that we have a bunch of overlays. Now in Drone Harmony, the way that we perform mission planning is by means of setting up so-called scene. A scene is a in-app representation, georeference representation of the asset and environment. And those colorful polygons you will quickly see represent some of the 3D information that's relevant for planning missions and executing missions in this specific environment. Let me now switch over to one of the other views in the Drone Harmony web app and also existing in the mobile app, which is the 3D scene. So as you can see, the 3D scene has a 3D representation of these buildings and the two cooling towers that are standing there. And what you also see here is that we already have planned a flight mission to map one of these two cooling towers. So the typical workflow in Drone Harmony would be setting up such a scene. I'll just touch upon real quick afterwards how you might go about doing this. There's a lot of information available that I can also answer questions later, but basically one sets up a scene and then one generates flight missions for the assets that are in the scene. So now real quick, how would I generate a flight mission once I have a scene? So let me switch here over to the filters. You see that I have my 4 scenes that we've seen previously on the map. I'll switch over to cooling tower example. And in plans, I'll remove the visibility of the 2 plans that we've already planned. And let's plan a new mission for this particular cooling tower. Let's see how this process looks like. So I'll go here over to the bottom right and click on the plus. And remember, I can do this from map view or from the 3D view. It's convenient to do it from the 3D view because I really see the asset better. And I go over down here to inspection, and let's pick perimeter verticals. This is a flight pattern that I can use to apply to any object in the scene that has a third kind of dimension, 3-dimensional asset. So here I have some of the areas in my scene. I didn't name them very meaningfully, but I can rename them to help me remember which one's which. I just remember this round one is the first part of the cooling tower that I'm interested in. So I pick that one. And then I'm kind of guided through a simple workflow that tells me what to do. The next step is to, let me remove this screen share. Perhaps it's not visible what's underneath. Move it down here. So the next step is to pick a liftoff location for our flight. So I'll pick a location here in the parking lot, for example. And now we enter this kind of dual interface where on the left, we will be picking some parameters for our flight, things like side offset, start altitude, and so on and so forth. In these tabs, we have some more relevant parameters. And on the right, we see a visualization of the flight plan that is being created for us. And let's make some adjustments and see what happens. So let's say that we want to fly a bit closer. So you see that our mission snapped a bit closer to the cooling tower. Let's go to the overlap. Maybe this is more overlap than we need, so we might want to adjust the overlap parameters, either using our sliders or the text box, and so on. The coverage tab can allow us to cover the entire circumference or just part of the circumference. So let's go ahead and cover the entire circumference. So if we're happy with this mission, we can just click here on Save, give this plan a name. So then I'll just call it New Plan for now, New Plan. And here we have our plan ready in our scene. And once we've planned the mission, we still have a lot of ways to interact with the specific mission. I can choose waypoints, I can rotate them. If I need to do any sort of kind of local adjustments, I have all the freedom in the world to do so, either in 2D, in 3D, or in 3D. So let me undo that change. So that's kind of a very quick rundown on how to plan a mission in Drone Harmony. Now, if we might want to plan also for the top part, this is also, of course, possible. We will pick the second part here, and we will plan a similar mission, perhaps with a slightly higher takeoff minimal altitude. In the end, we will get a result that looks, let me just quickly show you the end result. So in the end, we will get a end result that looks something like that. And that might already be sufficient for our mapping task, or we might want to do something else, add some more capture perhaps from the top, or some additional connecting images here between the two layers of the cooling tower. Now, before I conclude this part, maybe a short word, why do we have all the other objects? So there's two main reasons. One reason is to have some sort of situational awareness, to understand what's the relative positions of different structures that might be relevant. But also it's important to say that the Drone Harmony algorithms are able to account for these obstacles during mission planning. So if we are planning some mission, let me just quickly show this again, verticals for the same cooling tower, you will notice that if I create a mission, and you will see this in a minute. So here I'm creating a new mission down there, and if I'm creating an offset that's too large, and it starts intersecting with some of the other assets in the scene, you see over here, for example, then all of the obstacles that I'm adding are actually taken into consideration. So that's why we usually work to create a full scene, as much of the 3D information as possible, and before we start planning missions. That just creates better, more suitable missions. So yeah, I think I'll stop here for now. I will probably show a few other things later on during the presentation.
Thanks, David. So Danny, you've been using Drone Harmony quite a lot. I'll just bring up this presentation again. So Danny, top tips for taking Drone Harmony in the field and actually executing one of those flight plans.
Yeah, all right, thanks, Derek. So definitely top tips for flying missions in the field with using Drone Harmony. Hands down, it's got to be the best application I've ever used. Beats anything else on the market in my own eyes. I'll start with tip number one is the obstacles. So as David mentioned, the Drone Harmony app only knows that there are obstacles close to the subject if you put them in during the scene stage. Trees, power lines, buildings, vehicles. You want to have everything possible into the app, so the app knows exactly what to plan around. A sufficient enough overlap of the areas that might be left around the obstacles can actually fix up the further model. Just allow enough transition between all the automated flights and the manual flights if you need to actually fly extra. Tip number two is calibrating the structures and towers to successfully have the correct parameters on the flight planning stage. It helps to calibrate the structures before actually running the mission. There is a calibration tool on the actual app itself when you're in the field. This will help the drone actually pinpoint the exact spot for example, the corner of a building or the center of a telco tower. Google Maps is pretty accurate, but can be slightly off compared to what the actual drone sees and moves around. And the last thing you need is the drone, say, flying into one of the obstacles. Doing these calibrations removes the effect of the inherent GPS XY error as well. Tip number three, we'll say setting up the camera. I tend to set up the camera in the DJI Go 4 app. That way, at least I can actually keep an eye on all my settings. We recommend to use manual control camera settings or aperture priority. It gives a much better model than just using your automatic modes. White balance must be set to manual. An automatic white balance will throw off the images in the processing stage. My tip number four, working out the specific heights or distances. Generally, using a laser rangefinder or another drone, in my case, I use a Mavic Mini just because it's small, is a great tool to keep in the arsenal to be able to measure the exact heights of buildings or obstacles around you, or to measure distances, say, that you can't get to on foot. Tip number 5, transition shots. Always plan transition shots into your flight plan. A photo every 30 degrees is recommended for a successful capture, which you'll see in the example a little bit later in this webinar. For example, when you're flying around a small building using, say, the perimeter verticals plan coupled with a map-in top-down plan, there's not enough transitional imagery between the two plans. You would actually run, say, another perimeter capture with a 45-degree angle, a 50-degree angle, et cetera, on the photos to be able to cover enough transitions. Yeah, that's my top 5 tips.
Thanks, Danny. So as we discussed this cooling tower as an example, this is one that Danny's actually captured, and that was using the Inspire 2. So as you can see, similar to what David showed you earlier, we set 2 different flight plans. So it was captured autonomously. And this large cooling stack ended up just becoming, 2,700 images at an average resolution of 5 millimeters per pixel. So we tend to find a lot of our models are modeled to a resolution. So what 1 pixel is equivalent to in millimeters in real life. So we see them sit anywhere around the 10 millimeter per pixel, as detailed as down to less than a millimeter, some as far as 0.3 of a millimeter per pixel. So we're talking really high detailed models. But this example we're going to show you is captured to 5 millimeters per pixel. So if we take it through, I will turn my screen on. Let's share that with you. So as we can see, this is the result after all of the images taken. They're uploaded to Trendspek and we take care of the rest. So we take all of those images and we process them into a 3D model that's hosted on any web browser, which means it doesn't matter about the file size. There's no limit to the amount of photos. We have some data sets that are in excess of 15,000 photos, and some as small as 100 photos. So there's no limit on what you can do. And because it's all cloud hosted securely, we effectively stream the asset. So as you zoom in, it continues to re-render to its highest resolution. So as we keep going in, you can see that the model begins to re-render itself and up to its highest resolution. So there are a few ways you can use Trendspek. Naturally, it's built based on photos. So if you actually want to see the original photos, all you need to do is just simply right-click on it, and you can see exactly where I clicked on the model. And then over on this side, you can see the orange pin is where I've clicked. Now, if I wanted to look at something different within the photo, say I wanted to go down here and have a look at where is this tile in relation to, I can simply right-click on it and you'll see that the pins move down here. So this is where that position is. From here, you can do a full condition assessment using what we call our annotation cards. And we have 3 different types. We have pins, lines, and polygons. So if we want to mark one of these tiles to create an annotation card, we simply click on that point and we're brought up with a card. So we can then change things like the icon and color. It contains all of the geospatial information. We can put in descriptions. Contains all of the images that contain this exact point. We can then do a custom defect analysis. So we can set custom drop downs here. We can change severities. We can change different defect types, and you can just add new ones in there as you see fit. It also includes a full audit log. So anything that's been changed within this card, it will give you an audit log, because Trendspek is designed for teams to use. So it's not a solo program. It's all designed for multiple teams to collaborate on a single source of truth. We also have this files tab. So think of this as like Dropbox for this asset, and specifically for this exact point. So we might put in there PDFs like design drawings, scope of works. We could add more images, video. Really, we can store anything we want attached to a specific point in 3D space. The line tools are very similar, so we can create measurements simply by adding a click. We can add multiple clicks, and to finish the line, it's just a simple right click, and that will bring up a similar annotation card, but you can see now that our position information includes the start and finish points, and it includes things like distances, heights, slopes, and then the rest of the card remains the same. And then we can also do that based on area. So working out an area size is as simple as just clicking what you want to measure, the right click to finish off the polygon, and that will give us the total area. And if we're on land, that will, so you can quickly calculate volume, both cut and fill volumes. And same as the other cards, the card remains the same. I might pop into another data set to quickly show you some other features. So for instance, if we end up with, and we've seen some assets with hundreds and hundreds of defects, it ends up looking a bit like this, which you might have a big list of different annotations, and you can simply just click on them to fly to them. And to sort out a big list, we can easily create new folders, and it's simple as just naming a new folder, and then it's just dragging and dropping these annotations into different folders. And we also have the ability to filter them, so we only are looking at things that are of interest of us. So, we've seen different teams use different colors. We've seen different defect types or use different icons or different colors. So it's really a way of making a lot of data really easy to understand and really easy to comprehend. Then if we wanted to generate, say, all of these annotations as a presentation-ready report, all we have to do, email address, send report, and in a couple of minutes you'll receive an email with a link to your PDF-ready report. One of the big features, though, is once you start, say you're using an app like Drone Harmony, the idea is that you continue to model this throughout the maintenance program. So it might be captured every 6 months, might be captured every 12 months. But what we can do is we can start layering that information on top of each other. So we can either do that through a timeline. For instance, this is captured back in January of this year, but we can see what this looked like back in 2018. So if you're looking down here, we can see this area has deteriorated a bit. And if we went all the way back to 2016, we can see that, this part of the asset was fine. Another way to do it is, side by side. So we can see, and these two viewers are synced. So we can see, if we look down here, in comparison 2016 to 2018 and how this has changed over time. So that's a bit of a quick rundown of what the capabilities are in Trendspek. A few of the other tools and features is we have asset wide. Actually, one part of it in terms of collaborating with teams is we have very granular levels of different permissions. Because it's designed to be used internally within an organization, but also to be able to share it externally, we can control the data. We can control who logs in, what they can do once they log in. So you can see with this data set, which I didn't have permission in the other data set, was our chat feature. So we can use this as, for instance, your WhatsApp chat for a particular point, or we can also do it on an asset-wide level and have a group discussion live in real time with our colleagues or external stakeholders. So that's a bit of a quick overview. If there's any other further questions, you can jot them down and we can come back to it. But otherwise, I might pass back to David, and I know before the webinar we had a few different people wanting to look at different types of assets. One being linear type of assets like rail and road, and another one, if you could quickly just show us through a telco or cell tower capture, that would be good. So I will hand it back over to David to show us through a couple of others.
Thank you very much, Derek. Yes, I will happily show a few other examples. I'm just preparing my screen here. So I'll start my share immediately. Yes. Okay, so just real quick, a few other examples of use cases. We've seen something like an industrial inspection site. I've prepared a few other sites here in this part of Europe, here in Switzerland, with some other types of assets, as well as some other types of data that one can, examples that demonstrate how you can use other types of data for automating your data acquisition, your mission planning. So let me first off start with something which uses elevation data. I think it's a very important, relevant type of data to be used in data acquisition, especially when one deals with, let's say, some uneven terrain. Here in Switzerland, it's very, very uncommon to have even terrain. So elevation data is absolutely critical to be able to plan good flights, especially of mapping of larger infrastructure or mapping of land. So as a very, very simple example, I prepared here a simple topograph, kind of a simple survey type mission. And this is just to show you that there is a third view within Drone Harmony that deals specifically with terrain data. So I switch here over, instead of from map view to 3D view, I'll switch straight down to 3D terrain view. And you'll see how our terrain view looks like. So for Switzerland, in my account that I'm displaying here, we have the full terrain model of Switzerland available and streamed from the Drone Harmony cloud to my front end here. And you see that the mission that we've seen before on the map is actually representing a terrain-aware flight here in this mountainous area of Switzerland. So if you're planning some sort of survey mission or a linear mission, I'll show you quickly how to perform a linear mission here, then you might be interested in using some sort of terrain data. I'll say later what are good sources for terrain data that you can use within Drone Harmony, but for the larger enterprises, there is a way to contact Drone Harmony and to give us a large set of terrain data, and we will just host it for you in our cloud for you to be able to use within Drone Harmony. And the interface is really like you would expect from kind of Google Earth, or as long as you're scrolling in the geographic area where you have terrain, you will have the terrain being populated for you. So this is kind of a convenience for larger customers which really have a lot of terrain data and want to not need to worry about terrain. So let's quickly plan a linear infrastructure mission in this area, just as an example. So we have here this nice little road, so I think it's a great way to demonstrate this. And here I will, for the first time, probably also show how we can input information into the scene. So the most manual ways, and on the other hand quite flexible, is to use one of our tools. So we can create a line using the line tool here. And I'll just outline this road here real quick. And I'm not going to be very accurate about it right now, just gonna roughly outline it for interest of time, but just something like that, just a section of this road. And let me just press on finish here. When we press on finish, we the line is determined. Let's give it a different color just for us to perhaps see it a bit better here. So this line, let's now switch over to 3D terrain again, and we'll see that this line is now overlaid on our terrain as well. This is this line over here. And let's plan a terrain-aware mission kind of for this specific linear infrastructure asset. So I'll go over again to the plus here on the bottom right, where I have my plan catalog with all the patterns that I can apply. And here on the top, I have a partition of this plan catalog into types of data that I'm using. So since I'm using terrain data, I'll switch over to the terrain tab, and I'll go all the way down to linear, and I'll pick linear terrain line. So here I might want to start my mission somewhere around here near this house, and perhaps I want to end the mission actually on the other end. It's not uncommon to not fly all the way back when we're doing this type of missions. So let's say that we want to land in a different place than we started. So again, my share screen thing is on top here. So once I've picked my takeoff and landing location, I just press on continue, and I have here the same type of view that we've seen before, except that we're looking now at our terrain view, and we're planning this linear infrastructure mission. And again, on the left, I have a number of parameters that I can control: front lap, flight altitude, and so on and so forth. And when I change any of these things, I have an immediate impact on the mission, and I can really see it before I even commit to finishing the planning for it. So let's save it, give it another name. Let's say new road scan, and this mission will remain in my state. And again, I can now save it to the cloud, and the inspection engineer, the operator in the field, can synchronize from the cloud on their mobile device and start executing this mission. So this is an example of a road scan. There are various other use cases for terrain, and I want to really give you a quick sneak peek into something that we're actually releasing quite soon. It's not currently available, but I think that might be of interest for people who are really working on really complex terrain. So I'll just zoom here on a different asset. So you see here, this is again in Switzerland, and I have the privilege of having terrain everywhere in Switzerland, just because, as I said before, we have this streaming option, and I have the terrain for Switzerland just loaded for me into Drone Harmony Cloud. So you see that this is a mission, and now this is a terrain-aware mission for mapping this specific area here. And the mission might look weird to you in terms of its shape, but what is probably hard to appreciate from this view is that this is extremely steep terrain. So let me just switch over here to the terrain view. So you see that we actually have cliffs here. This is not by any stretch of the imagination standard terrain. This is really cliffs and very, very, very steep type terrain. And the question is, how can we perform mapping of such areas? So now you actually see the 3D view of the mission that I've shown you before. So this is a type of mission that we're currently finishing developing, and that will enable mapping this type of terrain, very, very steep and uneven terrain. And just to show you why it's important to be able, and you see that we have here very good overlaps everywhere, including in the essentially vertical parts of the terrain. And these missions will always look much more complex than your standard terrain-aware mission. Just to show you a comparison of how would the terrain-aware mission look like for the same area. I think this is hill scan here. So I'm now showing you the new type of mission, and let me quickly show you how a mission would look like if we would just perform what would be called a standard terrain-aware. So this is standard terrain-aware. If you look at it from the top, it looks like a perfect grid. But this is exactly the point. The steeper the terrain becomes, the less a perfect grid is suitable. And you really see this here in these steep parts, that we have very bad coverage of these areas. So we will not have any usable data for this part of the terrain. Of course, for the flat parts, we'll have no issue whatsoever. So this is just another example of kind of a more complex use case which uses terrain. And terrain does not need to be DEM. It can also be digital elevation model. It can also represent a digital surface model. And all of these information can be used within Drone Harmony. Now, the last example I probably want to show is cell tower. And cell tower is a market for which we develop a specific app, which we call Cell Tower Scan. It's only available in the mobile application. So what I'll do is I'll show you quickly a few screenshots from a video that we have on our YouTube channel. So I switch here over to our YouTube channel, and I'll go to videos here real quick, and terrain aware. Pardon me for looking for it real quick. So I'll find it faster through the playlists. This is also an opportunity for me to show you that we have a YouTube channel where there are a lot of resources. One can find a lot of additional information. We'll be happy to answer also some questions later on. So here in this specific instance, I'm kind of demonstrating the Cell Tower Scan. Cell Tower Scan is a app that's designed for inspecting cell towers. And as you can see here, what we have is a specific modeling framework for modeling cell towers in the mobile app itself. So it's very easy to set up a model like this, including antenna levels and their specific dimensions, the environment, the tower of the antenna, and the tower of the itself, and so on and so forth. And the rest of the workflow is very similar. So actually, this is a nice way to show you also a little bit a snapshot at the mobile application in case you're not familiar. The plan catalog for Cell Tower Scan includes 10 different missions, all of them tailored for cell tower inspection. And we've designed this mission in collaboration with a lot of partners and customers in the last 2 to 3 years, knowing what kind of captures exactly they want to do, and different types of missions are useful for different kinds of use cases. So here, here's an example of actually planning the mission. So here you can see on the right we have the parameters, and on the left we have the view, just as we've had in the web app. And changing parameters changes the mission. So cell towers, in case you're interested, you're more than welcome to reach out, and we will consult you also on how to work with cell towers. Okay, so I think I'll stop here for the interest of time, and I'll switch back over to you, Derek. Thank you.
Thank you, David. So just to wrap things up, and thank you to everyone for joining us today, we may as well let you know that part of our special offering for attending the webinar today is an exclusive deal that we've come up with between Trendspek and Drone Harmony, where you can get up to $250 Australian cashback on any new annual professional Drone Harmony licenses that you go with, or $500 cashback on all Trendspek business plans. So that's exclusive to you guys for joining us. So we'd really like to thank you for doing that. So if you do want to take in any of these offers, please get in touch with either David or myself. But saying that, other than that, I do have a few questions that have been asked. If you do have any, just pop them in the chat there and we'll try and get to them. But one of them first being to David, and it is, what type of drones is Drone Harmony compatible with?
Thanks. So Drone Harmony is currently compatible with essentially all DJI drones. Usually when DJI releases a drone, we try to add the support of this drone as quickly as possible. Sometimes there are delays with releasing the software development kit, so it takes a bit longer, but at the moment, all the Mavic drones, all the Phantom drones, all the Inspire drones and the M drones, except for the M300 that we're adding right now. And for the smaller drones, the Mavic Air 1 and the Spark and the Mavic Mini, we're also releasing the support right now. So almost all of them, and we're always trying to be as quick as possible to support the rest. Now, in terms of other platforms, we are actually planning to add integrations for some platforms. The announcements will be coming in the following months that are not DJI. And as a long-term strategy, we're actually planning to support as many drones as possible because we want to be kind of drone agnostic with our platform. As you could have seen so far, there's nothing in there that's really DJI specific. It's only a matter of integration, and for us, it's an important kind of part of our roadmap.
Excellent. There's another question here. I guess this is probably all around. What type of assets does it kind of work best with, and if there are any limits? So in terms of flight planning, David, there's not really many limits on.
I would say there are not many limits. Of course, the power of the system is used at best when you can set up a scene that represents in a good way the environment. So if you're working in an environment where you unable to set up any scene that represents very well your asset and the obstacles, that might be a harder use case to use, but it doesn't mean that you can't use it. I mean, we have designed the platform in a very, very broad way, and we have users across essentially any industry. So I'd say it's there's a certain use case for which the platform is really tailored for example, these kind of vertical assets, perhaps cell towers, terrain, linear infrastructure. But there are some use cases where it's kind of harder to get by data for and put it into Drone Harmony in the moment. That would be something that would be perhaps a bit harder to use. But yeah, I would say it's quite broad.
And I'd probably expand from Trendspek's point of view, it comes down to the capture. So we have clients now across 30 odd countries and a wide range of different asset classes. So we have people doing a lot of water infrastructures like dams and reservoirs and tanks, a lot of linear assets, including road and rail, different facilities, warehousing, residential, commercial buildings. There's not really a limit to what you can and model. And because Trendspek is not, we don't believe in limiting anything. So the asset can be whatever it is, or whatever you want it to be. And it can be any size that you want it to be. So there's no restriction on the number of photos. And I think as I said previously, some data sets are up 15,000 plus images that go into really large, like oil and gas sites and things like that. A question here about flight planning and sharing flight plans as part of a team. How does that work, David.
Thank you. Yeah, maybe I'll just quickly share my screen again just to demonstrate it. I think that's the easiest approach here. Let me quickly switch over XN. So let's say that we would like to now take this flight or this site with all the missions and all the assets that are modeled in here and to share it with our operators. So what we can do is we can click on the site icon over here and just click on Save Site and save this to the cloud. We can also give it tags in case we want to say that this is some specific type of mission or any other additional information that needs to be added. Once we do this, the missions and the assets that are modeled here are saved as a site, as kind of a full thing to the cloud. And then here in site storage, if we click on load site, we see that it appears here. It has versions as well, so we can save on top of previous versions and the versions never disappear. We can load the latest or load an archived version, so there's no need to worry about overwriting things. And in the mobile app, once the operator with the mobile app opens the same menu, the load menu in the mobile application, he will see this mission appearing. And this will happen because if there is internet connection, there will be these missions will be synchronized and downloaded automatically to their mobile device. Of course, you will need to have internet connection on your mobile device in the moment that you download the missions. But then when you go out to the field, you don't really need to. You don't really need any more internet connection, except maybe for Google Maps to show maps here. Apart from that, you can work fully offline. And this can be done by more than one operator. You can be logged into the account by 5 operators at the same time. There is no issue. And one can have any number of states here loaded. You see I have a very large number of states already, all with different meanings and so on and so forth. So that's how collaboration works. And just a word about the future is we are also planning to have a kind of roles type concept within Drone Harmony in the near future. So that will also ease collaboration and make kind of separation of tasks even easier than it is right now. So that's it.
David, is the flight planning based on a camera? And if so, does it allow you to do modeling using thermal cameras?
Yes. So the camera profile is one of the parameters that one chooses when we perform mission planning. If we always use the same camera, we can just set our defaults in the settings of the web app and or the mobile app. And then we never need to change the camera parameters again. So by camera parameters, I mean exactly what camera we use. For example, we use a Mavic 2 zoom. So we know that it's the camera of the Mavic 2 zoom. Now, in terms of setting let's say parameters of the camera, aperture, exposure, and all these things. So most of the things are available within Drone Harmony. Once we connect the drone to the mobile device, we have access to a widget that allows us to control the camera settings. As Danny said, there are certain things you might want to do within the DJI Go 4 app if you're more familiar with it. So that's definitely a way. And those settings are then stored and carried over to Drone Harmony if you switch to Drone Harmony and don't make any changes. And in terms of multispectral and other types or thermal cameras, we have integrated some of Drone Harmony's, some of DJI's, thermal cameras. For example, the Mavic 2 Enterprise and some of the thermal cameras, the X2 camera, for example, as well. And now we're working on the integration of the one for M300. So definitely it's possible. With thermal cameras, so in general with payloads, if they're not just RGB payloads, it's good to look on our website to see if that specific payload is integrated. In some cases of payloads, something like LiDAR payloads, our customers usually use Drone Harmony to fly the missions, and they have a separate app that controls the payload. So that's another way to use Drone Harmony, which enables you to use kind of more sophisticated payloads as well.
Okay, excellent. And to carry on from the thermal as well, actually, I might as well quickly share. You can also model in Trendspek in the exact same manner as using photographs. You can use thermal models. So, and it works the exact same way. So this, the same annotation cards, the same navigation. You can still right-click and bring up the original thermal image plus every thermal image that went into making that model. So you can still do that within Trendspek as well. There's a question about how does pricing work. I'm not sure if that's for Trendspek or Drone Harmony, but just in terms of Trendspek, how the pricing works is based on the amount of images or pixels you upload. So for instance, we work in what we call gigapixels. So if you have a 20 megapixel camera, 50 of those images makes 1,000 megapixels, and that's what's equivalent to gigapixel. So we purely price based on the amount of photos you upload, and there's no limit on that. So there's no limited per month. You can buy them in different tiers, like different packages, whether you want 100, 1,000, or 10,000, and that's based on how much you're going to upload in a year. All the plans include up to 25 active users. So an active user, you can add and delete other users as you see fit. But, as we said, it's really built around collaboration. So it's not for you to download and for you to keep all of that data just to yourself. It's really designed to invite everyone in your team, invite external contractors or consultants or management. It's really built around the sharing of data, and particularly around securely sharing that data. And I'm not sure if there's any other questions, but that's all I had sent through to me. If there's anything else, pop it in here. Otherwise, our email addresses are there. You can get in contact with any of us at any time. But if there's nothing else, I'd really like to thank David and Danny for joining us today, and really hope that you got a lot out of it. And we hope to see you using Trendspek and Drone Harmony in the near future if you're not already. So, David, thanks for joining. I really appreciate taking your time.
Thank you, Derek. Thank you, Danny. My pleasure. Thank you very much for inviting me.
No, pleasure. Pleasure having you. And thanks, Danny, for sharing those tips with us in the field. We appreciate it.
Cheers, thanks for having me along, guys.
Yeah, so thanks for everyone for joining. If you got anything, let us know, as I said. But otherwise, we'll be talking to you all soon. Have a good one, everyone.
Goodbye.